People have doubled, tripled, even quadrupled their retirement income by getting their money out of their IRAs and 401ks. In this educational video episode, I'm going to address how IUL, Indexed Universal Life, can provide more income longer than IRAs and 401ks. Get ready. This may surprise you. So I'm Doug Andrew. I've been a financial strategist and retirement planning specialist now for north of 48 years, helping people optimize their assets, minimize taxes, and empower what I call their authentic wealth. And in doing this, people will always come to me in order to make sure they do not outlive their income in retirement. And I have discovered that there are three big dangers that cause most retirees to outlive their money. Rising taxes is the first danger. The second is inflation that erodes away the purchasing power of those hard-earned saved dollars. And then market volatility if they leave their money in the market. Well, this is where I am shocked how many people would come to me maybe 5 years before retirement, which I recommend that you seriously get together with a retirement planning specialist at least 5 years before retiring, because at retirement planning is something totally different than maybe what you did for retirement planning. And many times I would notice that they would have, 60, 70, 80, 90%, sometimes 100% of their retirement resources in yet to be taxed IRAs or 401ks in the market. And I would go, what are you thinking? And they would go, well, I've just been following the herd, putting money into here. And I go, well, you understand that Wall Street was never designed to create predictable income or predictable cash flow because of the market volatility. In fact, most broker dealers will tell their advisors, don't you dare ever illustrate more than a 4% payout out of a portfolio of mutual funds with IRAs or 401ks. Why? Because Dalbar, who studies investor behavior, says the average retiree with their money in the market is only averaging 3.49% because they buy and sell at the wrong times. If you bought and held and you didn't panic when the market drops down 25, 30, 40%, most people do panic and they say enough already and they sell low. And then they wait around to buy back into the market high. That's why they only average about 3.5%. If you bought and held, you'd probably earn 9.14%, but you'd only net 6% after tax. So $1 million nest egg, if you were earning 9, you could pull out $90,000 a year theoretically and not deplete your principal, but you're only netting $60,000 to buy gas and groceries, prescriptions, golf green fees, whatever, to live on. But the average retiree, if you only pull out 4%, which is what they want you to do so that you will not sue them, the broker dealers, for you outliving your money, that's only $40,000 a year. And even in a 25% tax bracket, you're only netting $30,000 to buy gas and groceries, or 3% a year. That's pretty pathetic. So many times when I would meet people and they would realize, oh, wow, see, if you ask on Wall Street when is the best time to sell your mutual fund shares or your stocks, they will say never. Okay, Wall Street was never designed for you to actually sell or liquidate because you have to time the market. And when you need the money the worst, sometimes it's the hardest to get, or you don't want to sell when the market's down and what have you. And so it's not a good place to have your monies. This is why many times I would advise people to do a strategic rollout. That's not a rollover. A rollover is going from the frying pan to the fire, so to speak. That's taking money in 401ks and rolling them over into IRAs, and the money stays in mutual funds. Nah. And then many times, if you don't need the money, you defer until you're age 72, and then you start taking RMDs, required minimum distributions, which I think is the worst advice for many retirees. You're not saving tax by stringing it out. I have software that shows people if you string it out and take out required minimum distributions throughout your life expectancy and your spouse's, and then you leave behind to your children the IRAs or 401ks, the remaining balance, And the children now can't leave it until they retire. They have to get the money out and taxed within 10 years because the government wants that tax revenue. It shocks people when they see the amount of tax they will pay by stringing it out. So I would show people how much they could save by getting the taxes over and done with sooner than later, and then reposition that net after-tax money into a portfolio of laser funds. Now, what's a laser fund? It is a max-funded indexed universal life insurance contract, structured correctly and funded properly, and it's where I have earned average returns for the last 42 years, as of the recording of this episode, of 9.62%. Now, some years you may not make anything, but you don't lose when the market goes down because your money's not invested at risk in the market. Other years you make money up to a cap, maybe 12%, 16%, sometimes no cap. And there are times when people have realized gains that they've locked in of 25%, even 61%, and 158% from the year 2020 to 2021 after the COVID-19 pandemic, 30% drop in the market in March of 2020. A year later, in March of 2021, many people with indexed universal life had received 61.33% gains, even 158%, using different strategies with indexed universal life. So let's just keep it simple and take it down to an 8 to 10% payout, because most people who own indexed universal life, structured correctly and funded properly, they can usually get 8 to a 10% payout without depleting principal. Okay. So let's talk about how IUL can outperform traditional IRAs or 401ks. If you could earn 12% in a mutual fund portfolio, which I highly doubt, you're only going to net after tax in a 33% bracket 8. If you had $1 million nest egg and you're pulling out $120,000 a year at 12%, in a 33% combined federal and state income tax bracket, you're going to pay out $40,000 in tax and only net $80,000 to buy gas and groceries. Most of those asset managers charge 1% asset management fees on the $1 million. So you're really only netting 7% or $70,000. Well, a max funded index universal life can generate $80,000 to $100,000 of tax-free income and not deplete principal. If you buy and hold in the stock market, the chances of earning 12% really aren't realistic. Dalbar says if you did that and you did not panic when the market went down, you might earn 9 and net 6, maybe only 5% after fees. So $1 million only nets you $50,000. If you only take out the 4% rule that the financial services industry wants you to, because most retirees panic when the market goes down, and so they only average 3.5. So if you pull out 4%, you're actually going to slowly deplete your nest egg, but not before your LE, your life expectancy. But you pull out $40,000 out of $1 million nest egg, you pay tax even at a 25% bracket, because maybe you're in a little bit lower bracket now because you have such a pathetic income. You pull out 40, you're netting 30,000 or 3%. So what if an IUL could be structured to give you like 9%? Many years I've earned 11 and netted 10. Let's say you earn 10 and net 9. You pull out 90,000 a year, tax-free. How much more is 90,000 than 30,000? That's 3 times as much. That's triple. We've had many people who have actually had payout rates of 10%, and because of their taxes and so forth, they were only earning 2.5 or 3. We have doubled, tripled, and even quadrupled people's income. So let me give you an actual story that illustrates what I'm talking about here. And this is one of thousands of stories where we have helped people dramatically increase their net spendable income. We had a gentleman come to us several years ago, right after the 2008 crash. And he had his IRAs and 401ks invested in the market. And for twice in the previous decade, he had seen his IRAs and 401ks invested in the market drop down 40%. So he had $600,000 when he came to us post 2009. And he saw that $600,000 in IRAs or 401ks drop down to under $400,000 twice, 2001 to 2003. It went below $400,000 down around $360,000. And then it came back to $600,000 by 2007, and it dropped 40% again in 2008. And he actually had to wait until 2012 before it came back up to 600,000. So he came to us when he was back to where he was 12 years earlier with his money in the market. And guess what? His advisor said, oh, keep it in those 401ks. We'll roll them over to IRAs. And since you don't need the money, just take RMDs, required minimum distributions, and keep it in the market. The market will always come back. Well, he was fed up with waiting around 12 years to recover what he lost twice in the previous 12 years. So he was all ears, and so we showed him a strategic rollout. What his advisor was telling him to do is take RMDs, because at that time he was 70 and a half, and that's when you had to start taking RMDs. And the year that he came to us, the required minimum distribution on his 600,000 was like 24,000. Okay. Now he didn't need it, but he pulls out 24,000 in a 33% bracket. He had to pay 8,000, a third in tax, and he was netting 16,000 out of the 24,000 to buy gas and groceries. Okay. That's pretty pathetic. So he's netting 16,000, and his advisor says, hey, maybe we can keep getting you 24,000 a year. You're going to have to take out a little bit more, but that's where he was at when he came. What did we do? Over a 5-year period, we strategically rolled out that 600,000. We were able to reposition it to where he was able to earn about 8.25% during the rollout process as he got money out of those IRAs and 401ks. And we pulled out $150,000 a year. Now, some of his advisors said, what? You're sending him into a higher tax bracket. Not by much. You think his taxes are going to be lower in the future? I don't. And so we wanted to get the taxes over and done with sooner than later. So let's take the worst case scenario first. He pulls out $150,000 a year times 5 years. He actually ended up getting $750,000 out of his IRAs, because the 600,000 was growing while we were doing the rollout. Okay. He pulls out $150,000 a year. He pays a third, 50 in tax. He's netting $100,000. Okay. That $100,000 net we put into laser funds. Okay. Max funded index universal life policies. At the end of 5 years, he now has $500,000 plus interest, but $500,000 in his laser funds. Now, those laser funds were able to generate at least 8% payout, and actually he was able to do 10% if he needed it. What's 8% on $500,000? $40,000 a year, tax-free. How much better is $40,000 a year of tax-free income than $16,000 after-tax income on those IRAs or 401ks? Yeah, 2.5 times as much. But he could actually pull out $50,000 because he was able to get a 10% payout. He was actually earning 11, netting 10 for most of those years. But we were able to resurrect some deductions. He was a sort of a real estate landlord, and so he had been paying off some of his real estate properties, thinking that would be a supplement to his retirement. We actually showed him how to resurrect some of those deductions and use his real estate properties and leverage and borrow money at 4.5%, a net cost of 3%, because he was earning, 9%. How much more is 9 than 3? Again, it's 3 times as much. He began to understand, wow, it's costing me because I don't understand how to optimize my assets. Long story short, as we refinanced properties and resurrected deductions, because I'm a tax strategist, we were able to get the bulk of that $600,000, which was going to $750,000, out of his IRAs or 401ks with no tax consequence, because we offset the tax by creating new deductions on his tax returns, by resurrecting deductions where he could deduct interest by refinancing his rental properties as it flowed over to his personal 1040. I'm a tax strategist. So he ended up with $750,000 at the end of 5 years. $750,000 at 8% payout is $60,000 a year. At a 10% payout, that's $75,000 a year. How much better is that? Even if you split the difference on that situation, he was able to, at 8.5%, he was able to generate enough to quadruple the amount of income where he was able to get about 62,000 compared to 16,000. He was able to get 64,000, even 75,000 a year of tax-free income. We have done this numerous times. So this is how indexed universal life, structured correctly and funded properly, can outperform IRAs or 401ks invested in the market. And you're able to sometimes double, triple, even quadruple your income. And at the end of the day, when he dies, anything left in his laser funds blossoms and transfers tax-free. If this is intriguing you, there are 61 other stories like that contained in this side of this book. But this is actually 2 books in one. I want to gift you a copy free. And you can claim your free copy of this 300-page book by simply going to laserfund.com, laserfund.com, or click on the link below. You contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I'll cover the rest of that, and I'll pay for the book. This side, the white side, is about 200 pages with 14 chapters with all kinds of charts and graphs and explanations if you're a left brain learner. If you're more of a right brain learner, you flip it over and read this one, and you can read about 62 different stories like what I just told you, where we've helped people optimize assets and minimize taxes, and many times doubled, tripled, even quadrupled people's net spendable income by repositioning money out of those IRAs or 401ks invested in the market, create more liquidity, safety, and earn predictable rates of return, totally tax-free. So claim your free copy. And when you're in there, and there's options there to listen and learn, watch and learn, check out some of the online educational webinars. They're no charge. You can even schedule a time to talk to an IUL specialist to see how these strategies may apply in your particular set of circumstances. And you may want to look at an RMD analysis report to show yourself, prove to yourself why considering a strategic rollout could dramatically increase your net spendable income, so you will not outlive your money versus leaving it in the market in IRAs and 401ks.